What's going on, FG fam? MLB The Show 23 is now out on early access, and the standard edition of this game drops Tuesday. This means it's time for another one of them top teams to rebuild in franchise mode to help you guys select the right team for you in this cycle. Heck, I'm still debating my franchise team, so it's time to do some heavy research here. But before we get to this, I do want to mention that the game has released with their rosters without Fernando Tatis. You can go in here, you can take a look at edit players. If you go over to the Padres, Fernando Tatis is not on their team, and that is probably due to his suspension, so I'm sure he's going to be patched in later. The game has also released without Kodai Senga on the New York Mets, and the game has also then released without Masataka Yoshida as well, who signed internationally with the Red Sox. Now, the rosters also don't have every single MLB prospect ever, but the top 100 are all there. I uploaded a roster from my Xbox Series X that I put in the vault to include all three of those players, and I made some slight changes as well to some of the prospects to make sure all of them were A and B potentials by order that they were placed in the MLB.com top 100 list. If you'd like to download my roster, just search this. It is franchise. It is under Franchise Guy 1988. I'm sure there will be better rosters than the one that I made, but if you're impatient like me, it is there for you to start your franchise immediately. Now back to the subject of top teams to rebuild. This year, I decided to give you guys teams from different categories that you could rebuild, so pay attention closely. First up, we will have the MLB The Show beginner rebuilds. Lots of new players join this game on Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation every single year, and a lot of folks want to play franchise, but they don't understand it. The offseason, the contracts, the scouting, the call-ups and send-downs, roster rules, it can all be so much to learn quickly. If that's you, I will be releasing a video soon on how to play franchise effectively. But also, if that's you, here are 2 AL teams and 2 NL teams that would be nice beginner franchise teams. In the National League, we start with the Chicago Cubs, who won the 2016 World Series in 7 games over the Cleveland Indians, and many thought that they'd be a dynasty, but only Kyle Hendricks is still on the team from that championship roster. Now, the Cubs are a nice beginner rebuild because they are a large market team with some money, but they haven't spent it super well, and that's where you come in. Guys like Bellinger and guys like Ian Happ are going to be having their contracts come up, and they're not worth re-signing. So you may want to get whatever prospects you can and trade for them, maybe Jameson Taillon, maybe Kyle Hendricks, to create even more room in that $34 million of available budget to make a splash in free agency. They give you a nice room for error if you're new playing the game, and you can also build the team in your image. As you can see, really, this team is led by Nico Horner, and it is led by Dansby Swanson. And I don't even know if Dansby Swanson is young enough to be a main player when you're ready to win a championship with this team. The other National League team is the San Francisco Giants, and they've been picked because if you're thinking about building a championship team in 3 years, well, then you really only want Logan Webb, potentially Kyle Harrison if he grows well enough, Camilo Doval, and probably Marco Luciano, because everybody else is either old or not that good and just pure out mediocre. I love Haniger, but who knows if you can win before he gets way too old to win. They have a lot of rebuilding work to do, and they have some money to do it. And if you blow the team up to get prospects as well, you could open up over $150 million. And I know that because I tested it. Jock Peterson, Michael Conforto, Brandon Crawford, Alex Wood, Sean Manaea, Ross Stripling, Anthony DeScalfani, Taylor Rogers, Alex Cobb, and even Mitch Haniger could open up a ton of budget to use properly. Can you build the Giants back to their success of the 2000s and early 2010s? In the American League, League, my first team would be the Texas Rangers. Now, they've been on my list in every top rebuild video that I've made dating back to MLB 20, and I feel like they have spent money to try to compete. Obviously, they have gotten Jacob deGrom this past season, but if you're building for a 3 to 4 year window, he's going to be really old, and he might still be pretty good, but you're going to have to bring up guys like Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, who are top prospects along the pipeline. You also have a chance to bring up guys like Owen White, Brock Porter, and Cole Winn, who could also fill out a crazy rotation. They even have 3 guys in the bullpen that have pretty good potential, so who knows what this team could do. Heim and Huff are a pretty good 1-2 punch at catcher. Nathaniel Lowe is a pretty darn good first baseman. Simeon would be old, but he might be good enough to stay, or Zeke Duran might end up actually growing. Josh Jung could be an absolute dog. Hopefully he grows the right way for you. Corey Seager will be getting old, but still good. Bubba Thompson, Leody Taveras, and Adolis Garcia, you would need to become a really nice gelling outfield together. There's a lot to like here on this team, and if you manage your money correctly and you make a nice move or two, there's plenty of wiggle room, and that is great for MLB The Show beginners to win the Texas Rangers their first World Series in their history. The other Chi-Town squad, the White Sox, make this list because they are a team with crazy potential that really just has not put it all together. Guys like Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, Lucas Giolito. This is a team full of guys with Christian Mena and Noah Schultz that could put a really great rotation out there. Also in relief, they have a guy like Garrett Crochet, who could be one of the best relievers in baseball should he ever reach his potential. Their closer, Liam Hendricks, is pretty good, but I'd probably get a new one. He's getting old. Catchers, they don't really have, but at first base, they do have Andrew Vaughn, and he could be a really good player. Second baseman, they don't have either, but Yohan Moncada was supposed to be a really awesome player, and he just has not panned out that way. Tim Anderson is starting to get a little bit old, show his age. He's at the end of his 20s and getting into his early 30s. He's had some injuries. Hopefully that's not a consistent thing. Colson Montgomery could be a really nice prospect, and the outfield is kind of strange as Eloy Jimenez and Andrew Benintendi have some potential, but those guys are kind of a little off and a little on. And then at center field, Luis Robert, as I like to call him, is their best player. He is their catalyst at just 25 years old. And Gavin Sheets is another guy. Will he ever reach his true potential? There's a lot of B potential here, but will they ever actually do it? It's a team that has players looking to reach their potential, and a common theme in this category: wiggle room in your budget. The top 4 moneymakers are well into their 30s, and they could all be dealt to make the team younger and open up some more cash. So can you help this underachieving team's players reach their full talent and win the Chicago White Sox their first chip since 2005? All right, now we are going to take a look at the opposite of beginner rebuilds. That's the pure rebuilds. These teams are bad. We'll start in the National League with the Washington Nationals, who won the 2019 World Series and lost most of their stars from the championship team. Of that team, Steven Strasburg, Patrick Corbin, Sean Doolittle, Carter Kieboom, and Victor Robles are all that remain. Now, Steven Strasburg's still a solid starter and unfortunately the ace of the staff. Corbin's barely hanging on to dear life in the major leagues. Sean Doolittle isn't even a good pen arm. Carter Kieboom is lucky to even make a AA roster at this point. And Victor Robles never really became that next superstar that many thought he could be. But there are some nice building blocks here, like Mackenzie Gore. They also have Keibert Ruiz. They also have Luis Garcia. They also have CJ Abrams, Elijah Green, James Wood, Robert Hassel. But it's more of a very good AAA team than even a serviceable MLB team. The other challenge for the Nationals, their $140 million budget, which is fine for now since they're bad, but they won't really have have the wiggle room that any of the other teams in the beginner category had. Now, Joey Meneses and Steven Strasburg will sell tickets for now, but are they going to be on this team when you're finally ready to take it to glory? The other National League team is the Colorado Rockies. Now, they've been a true rebuild ever since trading Nolan Arenado for peanuts, but now they're without Trevor Story as well. Their pitching staff is even worse than last year, and aside from Joe Rock, there isn't much hope of anybody here for the future either. Forget about the bullpen, and I am talking the whole thing, including 37-year-old closer Daniel Bard. There's no catcher to speak of here. Maybe Drew Romo will reach his full potential. Who knows? CJ Cron is the new leader of the squad, but he's 33. Brendan Rodgers and Ryan McMahon and maybe Zeke Tovar and possibly Zach Veen could be hopeful to be on a championship team when you're ready, but there's not much outside of that, and for now, they rely on old man Chris Bryant, who has just been waning, and it is clear, and Charlie Blackmon, and both of those guys are overpaid. As you can tell, Chris Bryant, 6 years on his deal at $26 million, Charlie Blackmon, $18 million, Randall Grichuk even. You can get rid of those guys, you can open up the budget a little bit, as they only have $29 million to spend right now, and you're probably going to need more than that to sign a new face of the franchise. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on how you would get the Rockies to win their first ever championship. Through rebuilds in the American League, one, the Detroit Tigers. Now, I did rebuild them in MLB 20, and they might be in worse shape now. It's been 3 years, and the prospects that were expected to create a wild rotation have not exactly done so. Now, Tariq Skubal has been fine, but it's Matt Manning and Casey Mize, who were originally the better ones, that have just not panned out. They blew it. Maybe Jackson Jobe and maybe Wilmer Flores can all of a sudden become something and be a 1-2-3 punch with Skubal. The bullpen as a whole is purely awful. This is just terrible. I don't like their closing situation that much either. Jake Rogers never became a true starting catcher, so Eric Haas has had to fill in. Spencer Torkelson had a rough first year up in the majors, and I don't even think he would start up in the majors right now with this rating. They're relying on old man Cabrera. Jonathan Scope and Javi Baez are becoming shells of themselves. They are bridge players right now. And Akil Baddoo never really lived up to the hype that he received early on. Neither did Riley Green. Hopefully Cabrera will retire after his contract's up and you're able to unload maybe Baez and Rodriguez. And you can open up about $100 million of space to potentially get a new franchise player in here and replace Cabrera and build from there. Can you get the Tigers their first World Series title since 1984? The other one in the AL is the Oakland A's, and they're easily the worst roster in this game after the A's have sold off all their players of value and they haven't really gotten surefire prospects in return. Now, they got the worst rotation in all of baseball. They have the worst rotation in baseball with no high potential prospects under the age of 23 years old. Tyler Soderstrom is the best prospect they have at 66 overall and 21 years old, and all of their other players are either prospects who are B potential in the 60s of overall, or they definitely won't be here when this team is ready to win a championship, which could not be for a really long time. This team is in really bad shape, and it's mostly because the trades that they have made have brought in guys that were highly touted, like a Christian Pache. This guy can't even hit above the Mendoza line. Add that to the fact that the A's also have an $88 million budget, meaning that with the A's, you're definitely playing money ball. An A's franchise likely doesn't make you a large player in free agency. Now, maybe you could get one franchise guy to build around and fill in with a lot of solid role players or prospects to try to win. It's an incredible challenge. Is it a challenge you're up to do what Billy Beane could not? Win on a budget? The next group of rebuilds will involve teams that you can just blow up and restart with. For the National League, we'll start with the Mets. I know, hear me out. When you open this game up in franchise mode, the Mets have negative $58 million in their budget. They have overspent by a lot, so they kind of need to blow it up in this game. The game doesn't care if you're Steve Cohen. You're still going to have issues in it if you lose $58 million every single year. They have plenty of good players making money, so you could ship off them for younger prospects or players that are a little worse but cheaper to keep them good for a while, because this team outside of catcher is getting really old. For a team with a $300 million plus budget, there are challenges to navigating it due to the overspending of Steve Cohen in real life. Can you make the right moves to get the Mets out of win right now mode and more of in win every year mode and route to their first title since 1986? The other NL team is the Reds. Now, the Reds have been a team on my list for 3 years running now, and they are always trying to win the NL Central when they should have blown it up a while ago. Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo is a really good start for your rotation, and Alexis Diaz could be the long-term potential closer. Catcher Tyler Stevenson is the new heart and soul of the team, as Joey Votto is nearing the end of his illustrious career. Jonathan India is good, but I don't think he ever got to be the star that the Reds thought that he would be. Ellie De La Cruz and Noelvi Marte, it's very possible that they could be the long-term shortstop second baseman group within the organization. However, I would draft a ton of outfielders if I was rebuilding in Cincinnati, because the outfield just needs massive help. With a $105 million budget, the Reds also have zero. Yes, I repeat, 0 players under contract after the first season. Now, arbitration and contract renewable players exist, but there's nobody who is for sure on this roster next season. Very attractive rebuild if you want a challenge of a low-budget team, but one that isn't tied to any one player on the roster. So, who would you choose to rebuild the Reds and make them win their first title since 1990? First American League team I put in blow-up mode is the Angels, as they have 2 generational talent players. Hunter Renfroe, and then a lot of guys that are either growing or expendable in my eyes. Shohei leads a rotation where Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, Jose Suarez, Griffin Canning could all grow together for a championship team in a few years, but the bullpen's a bit of an issue and the team has no closer. Catcher is also a need, but they have a couple of hopeful prospects in O'Hop and Cuero. First base, Drury is fine for that, but he might be a little old, depending on how long your window is. Rengifo is pretty decent. Maybe he grows over time. Maybe he's not there when you win a title. Rendon's aging and expensive, and he needs to be replaced. Fletcher is okay, but hopefully Nato grows well and takes over. Taylor Ward is fine in left field, but is he gonna be young enough when you're ready to win? Of course Trout is there, and you're not gonna get rid of him. He's amazing. And then Renfroe's fine for now, but how long does he stay good? There are holes on the team that if filled properly with money saved by dumping some dead weight, this team could win sooner rather than later. So why is it in the blow it up section? Well, you might also want to do that and just keep the younger guys. By blowing it up, you guarantee you have the budget to keep Shohei Ohtani on the team, considering he's due a new contract. The health of Shohei and his resigning and Trout's health will dictate whether it's possible for you to take the Angels to hoisting their first World Series trophy since 2002. My other AL blow it up team is the Twins. Now, the Twins is a team that tries to win the AL Central year in and year out just so that they can lose to the Yankees in the ALDS. It's a meme at this point. In a 3-year championship window, you might have Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Taylor Mahle, Chris Paddock, Jordan Balazovic, John Duran, Giovanni Moran, Joe Miranda, Carlos Correa, Brooks Lee, and maybe Byron Buxton as well. they might be a part of the roster, but a lot of those players are in their prime and a few of them are young. The Twins have a solid $189 million budget and more room could be created to start the rebuild. Minnesota's done a decent job of making the playoffs 8 of the last 20 times, but in those 8 trips, the Yankees knocked them out 6 times. Can you stop the early playoff exits and maybe take the Yankees out once or twice? Next up, we have rebuilds of teams with talented young core players. National League first, we're going to Pittsburgh. The Pirates have been really bad for a long time now. Since losing 3 straight NLCS from 1990 to 1992, they've only made the playoffs 3 times. It was in 3 straight years from 2013 to 2015 when they didn't make it past the NLDS. Now, Brian Reynolds is the guy that is their main star, and he's signed until he's 30 for the next 2 years. Roansy Contreras and Mix Keller are part of the young core players, with Quinn Priester, who you would hope would grow into a rotation spot. The race at starting catcher is going to be interesting between Henry Davis and Endy Rodriguez. Who gets better quicker? Termar Johnson looks like he's going to be a stud at second base in the making. Cabrian Hayes is already well on his way, as is O'Neal Cruz, so the young core infield is fine. They just need a little bit more. Can you draft well enough to keep this $109 million budget team taking that next step and keeping their core young guys to take this team to their first championship since 1979? My other young core team in the NL is the Diamondbacks. They have a really nice group of young guys to build around, starting with Zach Gallen, leading a rotation that could include Ryan Nelson, Brandon Pfaadt, Matt Tabor, and Blake Walston. They even have Landon Sims in their bullpen as a high potential reliever. Gabriel Moreno at catcher, Jordan Lawler as short, Corbin Carroll in left field, Alec Thomas and Drew Jones in center, and Jake McCarthy in right. That's a solid bit of guys that you could use to build a nice team. And the D-backs have a $141 million budget, so if you were to unload Madison Bumgarner, Ketel Marte, and Merrill Kelly, you can open up a nice little purse of cash. Can you get the Diamondbacks to jump the talent of the Dodgers and the Padres to win their first World Series title since 2001? For the American League, first young core team is the Baltimore Orioles. Now, they finally finished above 500 for the first time since their 5-year stretch of 2012 to 2016, where they were always above the mark and made the playoffs 3 of those times. Are they on their way this time? Maybe. This team is young, and they've got some solid building blocks, like Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall in the rotation potentially. Closer Felix Bautista, catcher Adley Rushman, first baseman Ryan Mountcastle, shortstops Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday, and Jordan Westberg all have potential. Center fielder Colton Cowser, and potentially right fielder Heston Kierstad, even though his career hasn't gotten off to a great start. Cedric Mullins and Anthony Santander may even be the old men on a championship team if you work quickly enough. With a budget of $108 million, the Orioles are going to have to be smart with their money, but they aren't tied to any player in year 2 outside of James McCann. The Orioles have a beautiful ballpark, and the fans deserve to see that first chip since 1983. Can you give it to them? The other young core team is the Cleveland Guardians. Let me show you something. The Guardians had a surprising run to the division title last year, and they haven't finished outside the top 3 in the Central since 2012. Cleveland has 7 players in their organization that's 30 plus right now. That's not on their major league team. That's their whole organization. As a matter of fact, out of those 7 players, only 3 of them are on the major league roster right now that are over 30. They have 2 starting pitchers that are over 27, and those guys could be replaced by Daniel Espino and Gavin Williams, should those guys grow and come up to the major league sooner rather than later. Their pen is also very good, and there's nobody in there older than 27. Clase is one of the best young closers in the entire league. Zunino was brought in to tutor the young Bo Naylor, barely know her, and Josh Bell was brought in to tutor the young Josh Naylor, barely know her. Andres Jimenez is awesome. J-Ram is one of the best players in baseball. He's one of the 30-year-olds though. Oh no, Too bad he's amazing. Ahmed Rosario is also not a bad pickup in that Lindor trade, just much cheaper. Steven Kwan broke out last year. He's only 25. Miles Straw's not great, but George Valera might come up sooner rather than later. He's a top 100 prospect. And then Oscar Gonzalez, a star of the postseason run last year. He's also only 25. Can you keep loading this team up with talent to not only keep winning the AL Central Division, but then contend with the Yankees and the Astros in October while keeping to their $129 million budget? That's a real challenge here. All right, with 16 possible rebuild teams, you really shouldn't need any other ideas. However, I have one bonus category: outside the box rebuilds. These are rebuilds that you won't see all throughout YouTube, and they still could be very interesting. In the National League, we have the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, they've never won a World Series despite making the NLCS in 2011 and 2018, and they've got a $154 million budget, ranked 18th in the league despite having a true ace in Corbin Burns. And Freddie Peralta, who could also be an ace of a lot of the teams we've talked about already. This bullpen is bad, but Aaron Ashby at least has some potential to anchor it, and Devin Williams is a solid enough closer. William Contreras is a fine offensive catcher. Rowdy Tellez needs to be replaced, in my opinion, and there's no second baseman on the team to speak of. Luis Urias needs to take a step forward or get out. Willie Adames is probably their main position player right now. They need Sal Frelick to come up quickly, one of Garrett Mitchell or Jackson Churio to pan out, and either Joey Weimer to pan out or to find a new right fielder. They need all of that before they're going to be able to contend with the likes of the NL East and NL West playoff teams. Do you have what it takes to make sure the Brewers are the class of the NL Central and can work their way through October and November to get to their first World Series ever? Second NL team is oddly in the same division, and it's the Cardinals. Now, I know that they've won 11 titles, but their last one came in 2011, and since then they've only missed the postseason 3 times. The problem is that they aren't competition enough outside of the NL Central, and they've got a pretty old team. Their starting pitching is nowhere near what we are used to from a Cardinals team. Flaherty's the one guy to keep, while hoping that Matthew Liberatore or Michael McGreevy and Tink Hence will reach their potential. The pen does have a couple of arms for the future in Jordan Hicks and Genesis Cabrera. Ryan Helsley's a solid enough closer. Contreras, good. Goldschmidt, getting old, really good though. Arenado, also getting old, but really good. They're all past 30, and it's time for Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker, Tommy Edman, Dylan Carlson, and Lars Nootbaar to be the leaders of this team into the future. They're going to need really good drafting to get some more prospects in the pipeline, and a $205 million budget could help retooling the team should you decide to trade away some of the older players and get younger. I got a special challenge for this one. The Cardinals won 2 World Series in 6 years. They've won 2 World Series in 4 years between 64 and 67. They even won 2 in 3 years in 1942 to 1944, but can you win them 2 in a row for the first time ever? So for American League outside the box rebuilds, who could it be? First is the Boston Red Sox. I know they've won 4 World Series since 2004, but they're in the AL East. It's a tough division, and despite their $250 million budget, they only have the 14th ranked team in the game. Their starting pitching is shaky, and Garrett Whitlock is the only one under 30. So they need Brayan Bello to grow quick. They do have Schreiber and Hawk in the pen for guys under 30, but Kenley Jansen is declining as Chris Sale is. The long-term catcher is not on this team. Tristan Casas has some time before he's ready, which is a good thing because Bobby Dalbec is okay for now. Trevor Story is 30 years old. We know he's good. Justin Turner is 38. Devers is nice and young, but he's not as as highly rated as we're used to, and shortstop could be a problem on this team. And aside from Yoshida and Verdugo in the outfield, the prospects aren't ready, and the major leaguers are just average aging players. Can you restart the clock on the Red Sox window since they've missed the playoffs 3 out of 4 times since winning their last World Series in 2018? Oddly enough, both outside the box groups are in the same division as we go to the Rays. The Rays have made 2 World Series in their short history without ever winning. They have a modest $140 million budget, ranked 16th in the league, and they're a mixed bag. Shane McClanahan is amazing to start a rebuild with, and these guys seem to be in waiting for guys like Shane Baz, Luis Patino, Taj Bradley, or Ian Seymour to try to grow up to the majors, for them to then be comfortable unloading contracts like Tyler Glasnow's contract, Jeffrey Springs' contract, and Zach Eflin's contract. There's lots of interesting things going on in their starting pitching stable. There's not much reliability in their pen though, as I wouldn't personally keep anyone, including the closer Jason Adams. I don't like their catcher situation at all. I don't like their first base situation. Brandon Lowe is a good player, but he may not be here for a World Series run. Maybe Curtis Mead makes it to the pros sometimes, or Isaac Paredes ends up growing into a really good player, but their third base spot isn't perfect right now either. Wander Franco, like McClanahan, is a stud building block. Randy Arozarena is likely the old man on a championship team, as he was once a young guy in the World Series in 2020. What is a center fielder, says Tampa Bay, and Manuel Margot never really panned out, so the Rays are in far more dire straits than they've been in a while. With their budget restrictions and their modest $140 million, can you help them out and finally get them over the hump to win their first World Series? So there you go, FG fam. 20 teams for a possible rebuild, and there's more left off this list, like the Royals, the Marlins, the Mariners maybe, but I wanted to be somewhat different with this year's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you got some ideas for who to rebuild in franchise mode. Expect my in-depth franchise mode tips video soon. Who are you running with for MLB The Show 23 franchise mode? Who do you think I'm going to use for our annual series here on the channel? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to tune in for the reveal coming soon as well. Shout out to all the channel members showing their support here for the channel. Love you, FG fam, and I'll see you around the comments.